I'm not in the shop today. I was yesterday, and I was the day before. It's rainy season here in Thailand. That's something I'm going to talk about when I get around to doing a post on cycling in Thailand. Cycling in Thailand is an interesting proposition, so you might want to check that out. Not sure when I'll get that done. I've been thinking about it for a while because there's a lot of little angles on cycling in Thailand. But it was raining, rainy season now. A lot of rain. Rains every day, sometimes it rains all day, but normally not so. Normally it's about downpour for 15, 20, 30 minutes or something like that. And then it clears up and then it's going to be spectacularly beautiful again. But you can't plan on when. Sometimes that occurs during the day, sometimes in the afternoon. Anyway, I had arranged my day so that I was going out for an afternoon, late afternoon bike ride, and I got washed out. I had big plans. So I went down to the shop and I started fussing around, and I've made a bunch of short little videos which I'm going to stitch it together. It's basically on chain waxing. I don't know if y'all wax your chains or don't wax your chains and prefer lube. There's reasons why and why not for each one of those. But I'm a waxing kind of guy. And so I just kind of documented what I do. But I'm not going to, as part of that, go through the whole process. I mean, there's ways to look this up if you're curious. Oz Cycle, for instance, has a couple good posts on waxing and how to start. If you're starting with a brand new chain, you still have to clean the chain because there's factory grease on it. And if there's grease on the chain, the wax isn't going to stick right and it's going to be worthless. So you have to strip the chain one way or the other, whether it's brand new or whether you've got 5,000 K on it. Anyway, Steven has great presentations on that on his website. That's a great website. I advise you check it out. Otherwise, you can also look up a step-by-step guide on the web. If you just Google chain waxing techniques, it'll pop up. And you can print that out and refer to it. It's not all that hard. We can do it. Even bike riders can wax their chain. But anyway, it's kind of a documentary on what I do. And I've taken the technique that Steven describes. I believe that's his name. I'm sorry if I'm getting confused on that, but I believe that's the man's name. I've taken his technique kind of one step further. Let's put it in hot water, stir it around on the stove in a pot. Not boiling necessarily, although that's not going to hurt anything. And that'll get whatever dirt has adhered to the wax out of the wax. But that's not exactly the case. I do that as a cost-saving measure for taking the next step. So I'll do the water boiling trick. I add some detergent to the water. Why not? It's not going to hurt anything. Detergent gets dirt out of things. So I do that. I'll do that 3 or 4 times. It only takes a minute or so when you're heating up the water and stirring the chain around in it. You'll see the crap come out. You stop, pull the chain out, dump it out, clean the pot, fill it with water, do it again. I do that 3 or 4 times. Usually by the 3rd or 4th time, you're not getting any more crap out of the chain. So at that point, next step, which is actually how to wax a chain and waxing a chain. For me, what I've found is after that step, if I go immediately into my finish wax, where I'll mix up the wax with PTFE powder, if I go immediately into that step, a lot of times when you're swishing the chain around in the melted hot wax, the wax will turn completely gray, dark gray. You're getting more crap out of there. So why is that? Well, paraffin wax is hard stuff. It doesn't melt at boiling temperature. It takes a whole lot more heat than that to melt it. I don't know what the temperature of the melting temp is, but you'll get that temp if you put the wax in a pot and put it over a very low flame. Or sometimes I use a little bikini waxing rig that's an electric controlled thing, and it works just fine. But either thing, I use both techniques. I'll just take an old pot, put it on the flame, and put my wax and PTFE mix in it, heat it up, put the chain in. Well, the wax is going to melt when it gets heated up in that hot wax. The heat of the hot wax is going to, move to the hardened wax on the chain. It's going to melt that wax, and whatever extra dirt has found itself ground into that hot wax over the 500 Ks you've ridden, that's going to come out as that wax on the chain melts. That's going to make your finished wax a mess. PTFE is not the cheapest ingredient in the world, so why waste it? So what I've found works really good for me is you can use any kind of wax you want, whatever's laying around. You can grab some from your mother's drawer in the kitchen, old candles out of the buffet, whatever you have, it doesn't matter. I've used beeswax because I bought some beeswax for a project, and you can't buy just a little, I bought a lot, and I don't need much. I need a piece like this to rub on drawer slides and whatnot. So I use that up. Beeswax is probably more expensive than paraffin wax, I'm almost sure about that. So that's not a recommendation, that's just what I do to illustrate that any wax will work. You heat it up, melt it, put the chain in there, swish it around, you're going to get dirt out of it. Pull the chain out, save that dirty wax in a container, wipe out the pot, put some more of that whatever wax you have laying around, and that could be your paraffin. Paraffin's cheap. Put the chain in there, melt the wax again, and you're going to see more crap come out. So what is this like? This mimics the exact same process you have to go through if you lube your chain. Putting on one of those chain cleaners attached to your chain and running your chain through it is kind of like the step where you're cooking the chain in water if you're a waxer. That gets most of the surface crap out, but it's not really cleaning the chain. It's probably doing it enough so you accomplish what you want, which is get the gunk off stuff. But if you really want to get it clean, what do you have to do? You have to take it off, put it in mineral spirits, white spirits, turpentine, whatever you call it. And you're going to do that more than 4 or 5 times. By golly, it'll take 7, 8, 9, or 10 washes in the mineral spirits until the mineral spirits doesn't turn gray anymore. And you don't need a whole lot when you're doing that. You use 100 milliliters or something like that, and you're just shaking it around until it turns crap, and you save the old stuff in a bucket, do it again, do it again, do it again. And after that, the next step would be methyl alcohol, and that's going to get any of the mineral spirit residue off, cleaned up really good, and then you're going to dry the chain and then re-lube it, and then you start the process all over again, because lube just attracts so much crap. Wax does not attract that much stuff. It'll get dirty. It's impossible not to, because you're riding down the street, you ride through puddles and crap splashes up onto the chain, and just the action of pedaling is going to make some of that dirt stick to the wax. But it doesn't get dirty like a lube chain, and that's one of its prime virtues. So this melting some wax in a pot and cleaning the chain in the melted wax, that's kind of that same step as the mineral spirits methyl alcohol step. And it only takes a couple times, and that hot wax has melted the chain wax and got all the crap out of there. You pull it out, and then you go to the finish wax step where you've got wax and PTFE mixed. I usually use a 6-to-1 ratio by weight. So, and you don't need much. I was mixing up 300 grams with 50 grams of PTFE, and then I turn the stuff gray, and I'm going, well, that's no good. And I'm wasted a bunch. You don't need that. You need, again, just enough to melt it and get the chain submerged, so it's going to get the dirt out. And then the same thing when you're finish waxing it. You don't need that much. So I start doing about 150 grams of paraffin and, what is that, 25 grams of PTFE. And I show you everything about how to mix that stuff together so the PTFE doesn't clump up and you get a really good dispersion of the PTFE in the wax. It doesn't float on the wax, doesn't clump up. The stuff doesn't dissolve, but it will suspend, and the way you mix it up goes a long way to determining the evenness of that particle suspension. So anyway, that's what I did yesterday. I'm going to put together a little presentation. Hopefully it's not going to be one of these long-winded things like I get into. And I'm going to post that. Also upcoming, I'm going to do a short post on the upgrade I performed on the Hambini bottom bracket. What the fuck? How'd I upgrade that? I'm just a dumb cook. Well, I use quotes around the upgrade. I did a modification. I'll explain what that's all about. You can be wondering, WTF, in the meanwhile. Anyway, thanks for watching again. Good ride. This is my first step when I'm cleaning and re-waxing my chain. I'll boil it. And I put some dish detergent in the water, and I'll heat it up, and I use chopsticks. You can use whatever you want, but I use chopsticks and just shake it back and forth and around for about a minute. And whatever crap is in there comes right on out. I'll rinse the chain, repeat this process a couple times. It takes 5 minutes. And then I'll just take the chain out and dry it and then let it air dry. I don't see any problem at all using some detergent in there because it's not going to do anything at all to the wax. And the PTFE that's in the wax is bound in the wax. It's not going to come out. So detergent gets rid of any grease. It's also going to help release any of the dirt that's trapped in the chain. But, you know, it's not like it's dirt-free by waxing your chain, but there's so many benefits to it. It runs smooth as silk, and when you're just playing around on your bike, like I wash my bike nearly every time I ride because I've got a good setup out there, and it's no problem doing it. That's done. Doesn't actually have to boil. I've got a good setup where I come home from a ride where I have a little bike station for some quick repairs and all my equipment. It's really organized, and right there I've got a bucket and hose and a couple of brushes. It takes me 5 minutes to wash it. I do this about once a month, depending on how much I ride. And you can see some crap has come out of there. I'm going to do it one more time. It's the fourth wash. And this is the last one I'm going to do. So before you start waxing your chain, you have to take all the old grease off. Once you get that done, it's kind of a breeze after that. Taking care of your chain. I don't mind doing this once a month. Just get I mean, when I'm washing my bike, I can wash the chain. I literally wash the chain and get most of the crap out of it. And then you can just run the chain through a towel in your hand. You get almost nothing onto the towel. And you can see that there's not much coming out of there now. So I'm not going to squirt degreaser on it. This was a brand new chain to begin with, and I cleaned it up really good before I started the first wax. Anyway, this wax, I don't know, I'll talk about it more in detail, but you should watch Oz Cycle and see what Steven has to say about it. He's the guy that kind of reminded me of this old trick. Used to do it in the old days, but I didn't know. We'll see. Now this here is the paper towel I used to dry the chain off. When I finished cleaning, you can see what comes off when I dried the chain. It's almost nothing. Chopsticks. That's a tool every shop should have. Tool of a million uses. I hang the chain up right here, let it air dry for about 15 minutes, go do something else, come on back. It's pretty dry now. And after it's waxed, it comes out of the wax, and I'll bring it over here and I hang it right on there. And these things will harden up like a stick, like a rod. You can pretty much hold it straight out like that. It won't bend down. So what you have to do is, when it's hardened, doesn't take long, I use one of the knobs on this drawer and I just run the chain over and around this knob and back and forth because you have to, it's hard, so the links harden up together, so you have to break the link. So I just run it over here and it takes 10 seconds and it's ready to put back on your bike. The actual waxing of the chain, I'll put it in here and I'll stir it around with those chopsticks and make sure the wax seeps down into the rollers. I'll just let it sit there for 45 minutes or so, and I fish it out of there and move it over to the hook and let it hang and harden up, and that's that. It sounds like a rigmarole, and I guess it is. There's more steps to it than if you just pull up and squirt some chain lube on your chain. But when you think about it, all the crap that you have to do to take care of a chain that you're lubing, I mean, every now and then you got to clean it, and it's a mess. It's a fucking mess. And then you got grease on your hands, and you know, that's a regular, almost daily thing if you're fiddling around with your derailleur or anything. You look at the derailleurs on my bike after I've ridden it for miles and miles. There's no dirt on the derailleurs. The jockey wheels and the cage on the rear derailleur doesn't build up with crap. You never have to clean that. I mean, my cassette, my derailleur, it looks brand new. You'll get a little bit of wax built up in between the cogs on the cassette, but I just flick it off there. I use a little soft bristle brush and just flick it out. And it doesn't stick, it just comes right out. It's the simplest thing. There's a little extra step I sometimes do when I'm cleaning my chain. once I cook it in the water, I say cook, I use that term, you just get it hot and so the dirt will come out. Water, detergent, shake it around in the water. I do it 3 or 4 times until no more of the black stuff is coming out. However, occasionally, depending on where you ride, how you ride, and how far you ride, you'll get some crap in your chain. Now this is previously waxed. You'll get some crap in your chain, and it won't come out when you boil it because boiling water won't melt wax. This wax requires heat, so I've got it on this little butane stove. Low heat, just enough to melt it. I'll put this in there. It's going to melt the wax that's in here. And anything that's bound into the wax, road grit or anything, it's going to come out in there. And it'll make it turn. Well, I'm using beeswax because I had it. It's all the same. Just to clean this. So I'm actually using hot wax to clean the crap out of the chain. This has already been cleaned in the water, so there's not much in it. It's going to melt in there, and any dirt that's bound into the chain in the wax will melt and come out. You can already see that's turning it kind of gray. So this is the alternative step to, if you're lubing your chain, what you have to do to really get it clean. Well, those little things that you attach to the chain line with some degreaser in it, and you run the chain through the machine. It's got brushes in it. That's kind of like my cleaning it in hot water and detergent step. It's not going to get all of it out. If you really want to get it clean and you've been lubing your chain, you have to use turpentine, mineral spirits, white spirits. And you have to wash it in that several times. Now you can see that's turned quite dark. There's probably more that'll come out of there. I might melt some fresh wax and do it one more time. So this is akin to putting it in the mineral spirits if you're lubing your chain. To get it clean, you have to treat it with the mineral spirits until it stops making the mineral spirits cloudy, and then I'm going to rinse it off in methyl alcohol, get any residue from the mineral spirits out, and then dry it. And then you're going to re-lube your chain and start all over. Although as soon as you put lube on it, it's going to start collecting a whole lot more dirt than this wax will collect. And that dirt's going to get down in the grease, in the rollers, and that's what's going to wear on your chain. Now look, chains don't last forever. You can go crazy about this stuff. The idea is to get the damn thing so it rolls smooth and it's lubricated, reduces friction. Well, there's nothing better than wax with PTFE powder for doing that. I don't care, dry lube, wet lube, whatever. The wax with the PTFE is the trick. It's really smooth once you do it. So anyway, I'm going to get this drained out. I'm going to do this one more time just to see what else comes out. And then I'm going to put it in some fresh wax. You can see bubbles happening. I don't know if you can see that on here because they're very small bubbles. But that's the wax seeping down into the rollers, and that's a good sign. It's not horribly dirty, it's still clear, but it's turned gray. So that's a sign that I got some dirt out that was embedded in the wax. And that's a good next step. Okay, so how do you mix the PTFE into the wax without it clumping up? Well, you don't. You mix the wax into the PTFE. Same thing as you would do in your kitchen. You don't dump a bunch of flour into broth to make a gravy. You take a little bit of this, add it to that, a little bit more, and you keep stirring it with the chopsticks until it turns into a paste. You build a paste and then you thin out the paste with a couple more spoonfuls, and you keep going until it's kind of like more like a slurry. At that point, you can add it to all the remaining hot wax and stir it in, and it doesn't clump up one bit. So I think I remember watching Steven on Oz Cycle demonstrate waxing his chain, and that's what he reported, is PTFE has a tendency to clump up, and it sure will, but you don't add powder to liquid. You add liquid to powder, stir it up, and add that back to the liquid, and it's never a problem. You do that with gravy, you do that with making pancakes, everything in the kitchen. It's the same in the shop with hot wax and PTFE powder. Now that's PTFE nano powder, which is super fine, so it's going to tend to clump up less. I think Steven was using 1.6 micron, and that'll work. 3 will work. It all works. You just have to dissolve it in the wax properly, and the way to do that is make a paste, make a slurry out of the paste, add the slurry to that, stir it in. So this is almost fully melted and getting ready to go. So I'm going to turn this camera off and get back to doing what I came here to do. Now you'll notice that this hot wax is not clear. When it melts, it'll be perfectly clear. The reason it's not clear is because I had previously mixed up about 150 grams of wax, and I used 6 parts of wax to 1 part of PTFE, so that would have been 25 grams of PTFE. So the PTFE is fully suspended in that. Now PTFE will never go into solution. It just doesn't dissolve, but it'll be evenly dispersed and suspended in the hot wax, and that's why this looks cloudy, and it's going to look a hell of a lot cloudier when I get that in there. 6 parts hot wax, 1 part PTFE powder. You can change that a little bit. I would do a little more, not a little less, if I was going to change anything, but you really don't need to. Once you wax your chain a couple times and you take the chain off to clean it, you get it clean, what you're going to notice is there's a little white coating that remains on the chain. That's PTFE still embedded in the wax. Like I said, when you boil the chain to get the road dirt out of it, you're not melting the wax. It takes this kind of heat to melt wax. Boiling temperature is not hot enough to melt paraffin wax. See if my shaky hand can do this. You see it's turned into a paste now, hasn't it? A little bit more. Stir it and add a little bit more, and keep doing that until the paste turns into a slurry. That's how you do that. So you see it's kind of soft. You can't dawdle because the wax will get cool and it'll harden up, but If you get enough wax in there, there's enough residual heat, so it's not going to do that. So now it's getting close to where I want it to be before I add it to the wax pot here. Now that's good. You can see that's a like pancake batter consistency. It doesn't have to be any more. Slurry is even thinner than batter, but that's going to disperse in the wax just fine. So let me add it to it. Where is it? Oh, it's there. I just flopped it in there. You don't have to worry about it clumping up. It's going to melt into the other wax now. You just stir it a little bit and it's good to go. That's all there is to it. No clumping, you know. And it's really evenly dispersed, and the suspension is good, so that the PTFE, if you add it right here, it's going to tend to want to float also. It doesn't get evenly dispersed like it does when you do this technique. Now that stuff is not going to float up to the top. So when you put your chain in there, you can be guaranteed that the wax with the PTFE is going into the chain, not just hot wax, and when you pull the chain out, the PTFE is on the outside of the chain. You want the PTFE suspended in the hot wax, so when you put the chain in here, it melts into and around the rollers. That's what you're looking for. I did a second treatment with the hot wax, cleaning, and mixed up some fresh paraffin with PTFE nano powder. 6 parts paraffin by weight, 1 part PTFE. And you don't need a whole lot, you just need enough to submerge the chain. So I used to do 350 PTFE, but I cut it back to 175 and about 32, 33 of the PTFE. 30, something like that. Anyway, you can see the wax is now staying kind of milky white. That means good sign. There's no crap embedded in the residual wax that was in there, because I did 2 wax rinsings, I could call it like that. So each one got progressively cleaner until I'm putting it in the finish wax. Now I used beeswax to clean it because I had it around. I don't know if beeswax is cheaper, possibly not. I can't imagine it is. But I had it, and I don't use it for much. And I still got a lifetime supply, I'm afraid. So that's what I use, but I would just use whatever cheap wax you have for cleaning it. And now this is the finish wax. So that's just going to sit in there for about half an hour. And that's that. I'll pull it out, break the links, and because it's going to be stiff as a board when it comes out of there. Paraffin's mighty hard when it cools off. Remount it and go for a spin. That's the chain. I'm about to put it back on, snap a master link into it, but you can see the amount of wax that's in there. A lot of that on the outside is going to come flaking off when it runs over the cassette. There's teeth on the cassette. It's going to push all the wax that's caught in the middle in there out. A lot of that's going to come out when you break the links. Remember, I was talking about having to run it over like a dowel rod or a knob of a drawer or something like that, is break the links because it hardens up. A lot of that wax is going to come out between the rollers. Wax on the rollers is going to be wax on the rollers for a long time. That wax is going to fall onto the ground, fall onto your chainstay, and get caught up in the cogs and fall onto that. And it's easy, you just brush it off with a bristle brush. Don't rub it off with your fingers, it'll smudge it in, it won't come off. You just brush it off, it's sitting on there, little flakes, and it'll come right off if you brush it. If you try and get it off with your finger, you're going to smear the wax onto the paint, and then you have to get some kind of remover and get it off. Don't do that. Anyway, chain goes back together with a quick link, and that's all that is. And you can see the opening there is a double size opening. It's made so that on the left side of that opening, closest to my thumbnail, it's a bit bigger, and the right side away from my thumbnail is tighter fit. So you're going to fit that over the pin, and then you're going to pull these apart so that pin's going to slide that way and click into that place. So a lot of people, they already know what this is, but just in case you've never done it, it's no mystery to it. It's easy enough. But the point is, when you're putting this back into the chain, if you look at that, there's a little tiny groove on the end of that pin. I don't know if you can see it. That's a camera. Maybe you can see it there. It's a little tiny groove, and that's where the outer plate on the other quick link will click into when you snap it in place. Now that groove will fill up with wax. When you pop it through the end of the chain, you're going to push it through that link there, and I've already done it and cleaned it out, but when you push it through, it's going to come back out, and the end of that's going to be covered with wax. There's no way you're going to be able to click that link into place covered in wax. So once you push it through, you want to take your thumbnail or something and just run it around that groove and clean the wax out of it. Make it easy on yourself. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hook it back up and take it for a ride later today, hopefully, if it doesn't rain again. I keep getting rained out. It's rainy season here in Thailand. You can see there's still a little bit, it's not a frozen link, it's perfectly free, but the wax is hard. It's going to take, I don't know, 10 minutes riding this before those rollers and everything are rolling along good, and it'll feel better after about 10 or 15 minutes than it will immediately. And then that chain's going to be good to go. I don't know how much you ride. I see some people around here on Strava, and they're doing 150K rides every other day and 100K rides on the off days. So I would say more than once a month if I'm riding like that. And that's why a lot of people don't want to wax their chain. They just rather touch it up with some lube. But lube is crap. I mean, even the best stuff, it's going to pick up road dirt, and it's just going to turn to fucking fudge in there and on those jockey wheels in there. Jockey wheels are going to fill up with fudge, and you have to clean it out. Getting that thing clean after, when you do finally clean it, is a major job. You have to take it and do more than just hook up one of them little chain cleaning tools. That'll get most of the surface dirt out, but it doesn't get the crap out that's down in the rollers between these plates, and that stuff is what makes a difference. Crap on the outside of the chain doesn't really make a difference. It's the rollers. So when you're cleaning it, what are you cleaning mostly? You're cleaning the surfaces if you use one of those things. Properly clean a chain that's been lubed, you got to take it off just like I do, and you got to clean it good. And if you only do it like once every other month or something like that, some people not even, it's a big job and it's messy, and you got all that methyl alcohol and mineral spirits you got to do something with. You can't just throw it on the ground, can you? So I'm going to pop this quick link in. There's two sides of that. The pin goes through from the inside and protrudes on the outside on this link, or vice versa. This one's put in already, so I'm going to put this link in from the outside going that way, and then they're going to clip together, and then all you have to do is kind of yank the chain apart carefully and it'll pop in place. They have a little tool that'll help you do that. The other way to do that is when you get it hooked up and you get these things properly hooked onto the end of the opposing pin, you can just basically put the brakes on the rear wheel and step down on the pedal, and the tension will pull the chain apart and it'll pop in place. You don't really even need a tool if you do it that way. But tools are handy and tools are fun, and people like to buy tools that work on bikes. So anyway, that's what I got to get going on. Well, that's the quick link assembled, but it hadn't been snapped into place. You can see there's a little gap on the right side of that opening. I just have to pull the chain in opposite directions on either side of this quick link, and it'll pop in there. Now I can do it by hand by pulling the chain, but sometimes only one of the pins will snap in place, and then you have to kind of take it apart and start all over again. But I'm just going to use my chain tool since I have it, and that's looks like a needle nose pliers in a way, and it's made so that one end of the needle nose will go in that link there in the opening where the orange part is, and the other end will go in there. And by pulling the handles apart, you actually pull the chain in opposite directions, because it puts pressure on this link, this roller, and this roller, and they pull in opposite directions, and it'll pop in place. Now I've spent a few minutes talking about how to do something as simple as put in a master link, but yeah, it's helpful if you've never done it. So if you have done it, stop watching. It's as simple as that, ain't it? Now all I had to do to set that pin in place was I just grabbed the chain with both hands and kept my thumbs on the protruding pin so that plate didn't pop off the pin. I just pulled it, and it didn't take much effort at all, and it snapped right in place. You can see that pin is completely filled in the right side of that opening. So it's clicked in place, it's ready to go. more of that stuff is going to come off as I pedal around. I come home, I'm going to take this brush and flick it off, and then I'm going to wash this bike. We had a lot of rain recently, so every time I go out and ride, it comes back pretty crapped up. Now, I'm not one of those guys that like, yeah, look at my bike, it's all crappy dirty, yeah, it's great. That's not me. I'm tidy. I'm sorry. Some people love that. They don't want to ever wash their bike. I think Hambini professes not to clean his bike much. I don't know. Maybe that's true. Or maybe I got that message wrong. But everybody has their own style. It all works. The important thing is to get on the fucking thing and ride. That's all it is to it. The world would be a better place if people just shut the fuck up and went for a ride. I'm going to have more to say about that in an upcoming session where I'm going to talk about the origins of the Unabiker and what that's all about. Yeah, it's a shtick, but there's a kind of an inside meaning for me, and I'll talk about the Unabiker a little bit. Some people have asked. Ready to go. That's the new tool bag. That's as trimline as it gets. I got a spare tubular tire, cartridge nozzle, 3 hex keys, a couple coin cell batteries, and a Di2 wire connector, just in case you never know. That's the bike port. That's the CFOC. I need to talk about that because that's a hell of a bike. That's what a cassette looks like after a bunch of miles if you don't use grease on your chain. Now, when this thing rolls through the cogs, it's going to break off chunks of that hard wax. It's going to sit down in there. So all you have to do is get a brush it off. Comes right off. Don't touch it with your finger. This here is a wheel cleaning brush meant for automobiles. It's really wonderful because it's got this long handle, very soft bristles. I used this when I had a certain luxury sports car I was tooling around in before I moved to Thailand. It's my bike washing setup. This is the bike port. It's my back walkway, and this shelf here I made out of salvaged pallet wood, and it's not super sturdy, but it's been here for 4 years so far, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. But this is I made this thing here because it will get some rain from time to time coming in from this side, although most of the weather comes from the front of the house. It was cool. Charging station. Yeah, there's a lot of electronics on one bike, but it's okay. This is my bike port. Backup sunglasses, alternate sunglasses, shoe storage, bike lock, What was that? Bike lock, a bike cover, rain cover, various bike-related stuff, a backup toolkit, saddle bag, Di2 charger, some cleaning tools, cleaning supplies. Back up from a ride in the rain. It was fun. I needed to get out. I've been washed out the last couple days. I kept meaning to go out, and then gushers of downpours. Down there at night is a questionable thing. I've seen large creatures down there at night. It's kind of a surprise when you come upon them in the dark. I always give them a warning. Sing a song or something. 5 or 6 foot long water monitors. They're not anxious to tassel with you, but you don't want that. More bike stuff. Set of campy wheels. More bike. Time to get something to eat. Rider fuel.